My name is Austin Thomas Jones. I'm an aerospace engineer, and I don't care much for federal firearms regulation. As an inventor, founder, and chief engineer of 2020 Armor, I spent years developing groundbreaking body protection technology for fighting sports and learning to lift a hardware enterprise to achieve its highest form. I then moved on to the private space industry, where I designed micrometeor shielding for soft-bodied spacecraft. These projects have endowed me with unique knowledge of ballistic protection and body armor, and how to defeat it. The Law Enforcement Officers Protection Act of 1985 effectively banned armor-piercing ammunition after publicity following an NBC primetime special on cop killer bullets. The government action criminalized the manufacture and import of armor-piercing ammunition, except for use by the government itself, and since then, attrition has rendered the technology unavailable to the public. But I believe in equality under the law, that if rulers are entitled to possess these implements, so are the commons. It is in this spirit that I'm working under the banner of Atlas Arms on what I call the Dagny Dagger. Joined by other skilled professionals, including an advanced materials engineer, a data scientist, and an independent gunsmith. The regulation defines as armor-piercing any projectile or projectile core composed of steel, tungsten, uranium, or a few other alloys, or one whose jacket comprises at least a quarter of total weight. Nevertheless, all manner of materials and interesting compositions are available to the 21st century armorer, which may circumvent the regulatory definition while producing superior performance to steel core bullets of the Reagan era. So the goal of this project is nothing short of resurrecting to us a constitutionally recognized property right, which has been buried in a political tomb for 3 decades. Initial focus will rest on the venerable 9mm Luger, a fast-flying and ubiquitous cartridge. There exist a few 9mm loadings which may defeat some cheaper body armor under perfect conditions, but this new ammunition will reliably penetrate all soft body armor at severe angles from short barrels. We aim even to defeat some plate armor while maintaining good terminal performance against non-armored targets with the advent of armor-penetrating hollow-point bullets. After success in this chambering, attention will shift to additional handgun and rifle chamberings, such as 5.56. We have in mind specific alloys and bullet geometries, but much research, development, and testing is required to refine the design and render the most dependable form. On the way will be costs of materials and prototyping, specialized ballistics testing equipment, a pile of body armor, a truckload of ballistics clay and gelatin, and significant legal fees to trudge through onerous firearms regulation and keep the ATF off your doorstep. Development of this ammunition is then estimated to cost a total of $30,000. Upon successful development of the most effective 9mm loading possible, Atlas Arms will publish our research back to the public so that anyone may manufacture and load legal AP ammo. As a bonus, we will write freely available code for the Ghost Gunner open source mill in the first public third-party utility release for the platform and the first ammunition code. And as an anti-monopolist and non-profit firm, we pledge to license all generated IP to other fair market players. Finally, to place these goods solidly into the hands of those who may lack means to produce ammunition, we seek to open a manufacturing branch at an expected startup cost of an additional $30,000. In the post-Wilson era of firearms politics, Atlas Arms is dedicated to weapons technology innovation that empowers individuals over collectives and citizens over states. This is only the first of several inventive concepts we will develop to this end. I and all the many interested in this work kindly ask for your tax-deductible financial support. I'm not interested in selling you a new toy, but in rendering obsolete this tyrannical law in the interest of all humanity. And I personally appreciate any contribution you can muster for the cause. Thank
you. That's good music. Welcome to Disenthrall. I am Patrick Smith. You plebs that don't have the ability to penetrate anything. Today we have somebody. We have Austin Jones here with us, who will be telling us about a possible solution to that problem that us plebs have. Welcome to the show, Austin. Good to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Very cool, very cool. So I think we're going to have a really neat show. I wanted to lead it with your awesome video kind of describing what you're going to do. And then I want to tell you that I know almost nothing beyond what's in that video. So if it's cool with you, throughout the course of this video, I just want to like dive in from an ignorant, know-nothing person's perspective.
That's perfect. I prefer it that way.
Awesome. So the first thing I would like to kind of, I just want to get to know you. Can you tell us like about yourself and where you consider yourself standing politically?
Yeah, sure. As the video said, I'm an aerospace engineer and I don't care much for federal firearms regulation. Beyond that, I don't care much for federal regulation of any sort, really. One of my heroes is Thomas Jefferson, and the other anti-federalists, George Mason, Aaron Burr, of course, the great gunfighter.
There you go.
And the others. So I would say I'm an anti-federalist. I've been in kind of the libertarian camp for quite some time. I guess I could trace it back to sometime in the middle of high school. I decided that I wasn't quite the conservative that I always figured that I was when I was small. But of course, I've maintained somewhat more contempt for the left wing of American politics than the right. But no, I think I've gone through an evolution, several stages, just kind of trying to make my beliefs more coherent. As they say, when you finally realize that it's never okay to hurt people and take their money, then you become a libertarian, and then you end up as an anarchist when you get rid of your excuses for it. So that's kind of the typical classic path that I took to my radical ends.
The thinking man's path. Yeah, sure, absolutely. So what kind of helped you along the way? Was there specific media you took in or specific personalities that you followed?
I guess I have my parents to thank for kind of like putting me in a position where I think independently, and I believe in individualism. I think individualism, that's the crux. I mean, if I'm else, I'm an individualist. And then I've had friends along the way who are, really into, libertarian philosophy. And honestly, I've never read Rothbard or anything like that. So maybe I lose points in the libertarian camp when it comes to that. But they were always kind of there. And though my anarchist politics differs from their anarchist politics, I have them to thank for introducing me to a lot of ideas. And then I've just, I don't know, I've thrown together all the things that I've seen in my life. I think what I hold dearest is that the fundamental unit of humanity is the individual. Very important. Second to that is that morality is objective, and utility is entirely irrelevant when you consider ethics and morals. So if I'm coherent with those two, yes, if I'm coherent with those two principles, that's where everything else comes from.
That's excellent. I'm trying to figure out how I haven't heard of you before. Have you just been like a low-key guy most of your life?
I'm an engineer. I've just been, I've just been in my little cave building stuff. That's why.
That's an awesome thing to be, man. As an engineer, that's an awesome thing to be. So, first of all, to all of our viewers across all the platforms, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, please know that we are available to take questions from you at any time throughout this interview. If you think I've missed something or you're curious about something, drop it in the comments. I should see it, hopefully, and we can go from there.
I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. So, I'm first of all curious. So that's kind of your background politically. What kinds of cool engineering stuff have you done in the past?
Oh, let's see.
Wow us with your prowess.
I graduated with a piece of paper saying I'm an aerospace engineer.
There you go.
And I was always kind of different from my classmates. And of course, all of them went straight to work for Boeing and Lockheed Martin. But being the principled guy I am, of course, that's not for me. And I realized, maybe I got into the wrong industry. And while, warplanes are really cool, they're also really evil. So, I had to find something else to do. Luckily, an opportunity came along for me to make my own job when I got together with a buddy of mine I had known for a long time, and we started a company that operated for about a year out of his garage before we moved the company to Toronto. So I got that's really that beginning of my career sets me apart from most engineers. I will admit to that. So,
yeah, you're one of the rare people that does the hard thing of putting your principles where your income is. And
I try. How could I live with myself otherwise?
well, you say that, but most people don't say that. And I think I've met maybe 6 people that have quit lucrative jobs because of their principles. And so I applaud you for that. I'm proud of you. I'm proud to know you just because you're one of the people that has the balls to do that. Well done. That's awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks.
What other, so what kinds of projects, I guess, bomber planes or whatever have you worked on? Anything cool?
Well, I mean, I should say I never went to work for Boeing and Lockheed Martin. I was already, very principled by the time that decision point came around. So my first job was 2020 Armor, that company I started.
Okay.
I worked there, for about 2 years, kind of, finished my part of the development. What I could do is, didn't really want to stick around for all the minutia and the business operations and whatever. My business partners are capable of handling that. Also, I didn't care much for Toronto, so I left there, and after a few months, I was employed with Bigelow Aerospace out in Las Vegas, and I was designing the micrometeoroid and orbital debris shielding for expandable spacecraft. So to give you this is actually I like to talk to libertarians about this because it's a case study in some of our principles. So this crazy dude named Robert T. Bigelow, he's a billionaire because of a hotel chain that he owns in Las Vegas. He decided early in life that he wasn't skilled enough to be an engineer. So if he wanted to work on his dream of space, he had to become a billionaire so that he could buy his own company to do aerospace stuff.
Okay.
So that seems pretty cool. So then NASA came up with the government essentially came up with this concept of inflatable spacecraft, and he bought the monopoly on it. Now, if you look at it, he's a crazy dude. Every time he gets on national TV, he talks about how he believes in aliens and he's had encounters with aliens. And actually, he's been able to swing it such that all of the reports you can look this up too. All the reports on UFOs from the Air Force are routed through him to study. But it's a wacko, bizarre company, and unfortunately, because again he bought from the government this protection, the monopoly. No one else is allowed to use the technology, so he just kind of treats the company as his toy. And it was really cool, the work I did there. After a while, though, I just didn't like the environment, and so I left there as well. Now I moved out to East Tennessee, and here I am to be with my fiance. And I work for a satellite communications company. And then finally, I'm bringing some of these Atlas Arms concepts to bear that we'll be talking about. So it's kind of my whole life path there.
That is awesome. Okay, so first of all, somebody asked, Null asks if you would consider yourself an anarchist.
Yeah, I would. But look, I mean, you know how it goes. Anarchists have politics, just like statists have politics, And I like to be friendly. I'm definitely on the right end of the anarchist spectrum, but I mean, I'm friendly to I'm friendly towards the left end to some degree as well. And of course, they would accuse ANCAPs of not being real anarchists and vice versa. So I stand on that spectrum towards the right side, but you know, I don't find it as useful as I think some people do to label all of my politics as that.
Yeah, the labels really do get messy, don't they? It's like, and everybody slices it 50 different ways and takes it to mean something different. I understand that battle.
I should say though that there is a certain individual power that you do find when you get to that place, when you start realizing like, well, geez, crap, you know, the world may not like it, but I guess I'm an anarchist. I'll say it, and that does, you know, that's your stand. That's really empowering to kind of cross that line.
They can't really hurt you anymore after you've already, you know, labeled yourself as a scary thing. Yeah, I got it.
Right.
He did. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just saying it kind of takes the winds out of their sail when they're like, but without government, there would be anarchy. Well, yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Yeah, and at the global level, there kind of is anarchy between governments. That's a whole other interesting conversation. He did say that he was a fan of objective ethics. I saw somebody ask that. Okay, so the next thing I'd love to talk about is I noticed that you named it's an actual company, right? Atlas Arms.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Not only is it a company, but we're registered a 501c3 nonprofit company.
How did you get nonprofit status for weapons research?
I'm tickled. I'm tickled pink. I'm tickled pink. I'm overjoyed. I got the kind of letter that is just like the wet dream of any libertarian from the IRS saying, we've determined that you are tax exempt and here's your documentation to prove it. And well, how it works is you know, it's true. It's nonprofit, and I'm doing research. So code 501c3 of the IRS law exempts research companies from taxes as long as they are publishing that research to the public or for the benefit of the public. So I told them, quote unquote, let's see if I can do it word for word. The mission of Atlas Arms or the main activities of Atlas Arms is to research current and feasible weapon ammunition technology to inform on the efficacy of federal firearms regulation for the benefit of the public. There you go.
I'm vastly impressed.
Every bit of it. Yeah. I'm doing every bit of that. That's true. That's exactly what I'm doing. It's just, you know, if they knew the spirit under which I'm doing it, then they wouldn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they can always revoke it in the future if they. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to what the government might do to you later. There's plenty to talk about there, I'm sure. Yeah, sure. So you named your company Atlas Arms, and you named its first product, if I'm correct, it's the first product, the Dagny Dagger. So I'm seeing a theme here in your naming. Of course. And so at this point, I have to mention that my son's name is Atlas and my daughter's name is Dagny. So you might notice a theme there as well. But if you
I should have chosen more unique names.
Oh yeah, no, everybody's doing it. No, if you could kind of tell us, obviously you're inspired by Ayn Rand. If you could kind of tell us why you decided on those names and maybe what Rand or Atlas Shrugged means to you.
Yeah. Okay. I did. By the way, I noticed you have this lovely studio. I noticed the John Galt quote over there. Well, let's see. I read Anthem when I was, 15, maybe? And it just, it's just like, wow, I can't believe it. Like someone has touched my soul. I thought only I, felt this way. Yeah, I think that's a typical experience,
Yeah, for sure.
And then from there, okay, great. Ayn Rand, objectivism, wonderful. And I'm not like a hardline objectivist. I think that I would quickly be disowned by the Ayn Rand Institute for other little trifles that I believe in that they don't. But there's a great beauty in romance, of course, in her works, and they're just great examples of what we can and should be. It's almost like I'm also a Christian, which is one of the points they would disown me on. And as I follow the Bible for spiritual guidance, the Ayn Rand's works, especially Atlas Shrugged, is almost like it's a secular Bible of like how to live your life in the non-spiritual realm. Beautiful. I like it.
Well said, man. Well said. Now that
I went through, I wanted, when I was trying to name the company, I went through a lot of stuff. I was very inspired by, and I love the video game Bioshock as well. I went through a lot of games like that, like Fountainhead Futuristics, which is kind of similar to Fontaine Futuristics if people have played the game.
What did you think of Bioshock's treatment of Rand?
It's really interesting. I think because I watched a lot of like the behind the scenes commentary, and Ken Levine, the guy who wrote it, he assigned Atlas Shrugged as homework. And I think it was that like he had this idea for this underwater city or whatever, and he was like, okay, well, what's the backstory? Who would actually do this? And then he found Atlas Shrugged. He was like, perfect, got it. Like this is exactly how it. And in the end, I think he gave it a fair shake. I think there's a lot of people that think that, because it ended up, terribly, it's just, a critique of its utopianism. But in fact, I think that a lot of it shows how admirable they thought it was if you look behind the scenes. Clearly they recognized that it was only great because of those ideals in the first place, and it took kind of an earth-shattering event that isn't realistic to make the city fall. That is everyone getting addicted to, supernatural drugs. So I thought they treated it well. What do you think? What's your
well, I forgot to kind of define it for those that might not be gamer geeks. So
I'm not either. Bioshock is the only game I
really
play, but,
okay. Well, yeah. I'm a gamer, but I've played all the Bioshocks. I think they really fell off later, but Bioshock 1 and 2 were video games that tried to sort of recreate the Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Randian, objectivist utopia in an underwater, isolated city. And there was a bad guy that sort of subverted the whole thing, and you could argue that it probably could have been the utopia that it was set out to be if not for the antagonist. But anyway, I enjoyed the games. I'm maybe more pessimistic about how well they represented objectivism and self-ownership and freedom and that stuff. But
I will say it was more fun. It was more fun to fight the collectivist villain in the second one. Than kind of like, Andrew Ryan, the kind of like,
yes,
John Galt in the first one, who seems to have been perfect on his principles until his world crumbled and then his spirit kind of cracked.
Yeah, and then he just went nuts. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's neat. So now the next thing is that the Dagny Dagger is a new ammunition. It's a bullet named the Dagny Dagger. Am I accurate so far? I'm coming at it totally ignorant, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you can have in mind, I had in mind calling it first of all,
don't tell me. I want to guess. I want to guess.
Go for it.
All right. Does it have anything to do? So I was trying to think, okay, Dagny Dagger, but it's a bullet. The only time Dagny ever shot anybody was towards the end of Atlas Shrugged, when they're going, they're in the underground, they're going to the bunker where Galt is being tortured, and she had that confrontation. It was like a really intense moment in the book where it was the final guard before the room where This is a spoiler alert, everyone that hasn't read Atlas Shrugged. If you haven't read Atlas Shrugged, stop watching this channel and go read it and then come back. First of all, so there shouldn't be any spoilers here. But at the very end, there was an intense confrontation with this guard where she basically tried to get him to make a choice, make a decision. And she probably would have let him live no matter which decision he made, either to try and stop her or to leave and let her pass. But he wouldn't make a decision, and so she shot him. Is that why you named it that?
Absolutely.
Yes!
Absolutely.
Yes, I got it. I knew it.
You get it.
All right, cool.
Definitely. And look, I mean, there disclaimers abound about that. I mean, that's almost as controversial as the quote unquote rape scene in The Fountainhead. But
yeah.
I'll say this. In my book, shooting him was definitely immoral. But the point is that he was not deserving of not being shot. I think is like and there's a lot of like that in Ayn Rand's works. I think it's the point of it is to be instructive as to the ethical realm, not necessarily to like prescribe moral action. So
yeah, coming from, because I would disagree with a lot of the objectivists of the current time period as well. They probably would definitely not consider me one of them, and I'd probably get kicked out too. The guy was guarding an innocent man getting tortured, so that makes him a bad guy. And so I'm not really worried about what happens. He shouldn't have been there in the first place.
That's true.
That's my only commentary on it. Cool. So now, can you tell us what your project is? Just like, what is the Dagny Dagger? Give us the full on.
All right. Well, in 1985, Reagan, that wonderful conservative on the side of all the other pro-gun conservatives, decided that police lives were at risk. Those blue lives we hear so much about.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that they were in danger because there was ammunition that was able to penetrate their body armor. So they made a features test on ammunition such to put out of business the companies that were making the ammunition at the time that could go through armor. Well, now they called it armor-piercing ammunition, and to this day you can sell armor-piercing ammunition, but you cannot make it and you cannot import it. So, of course, there is kind of this existing supply that is just dwindling down to nothing as it is used in demonstration videos and for people to have fun with watching it go through armor. So now if you go to try to buy armor-piercing ammunition, first of all, you'll have a hard time finding any of the pre-ban stuff, and it's going to be very expensive. It's in that way very similar to the machine gun ban, which also happened the same year under the same administration for the same reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But I have this intuition of kind of a principled and kind of well-read libertarian as well as an engineer. The state is entirely reactive in what they do. They can only make judgments based on what currently exists, and they have no imagination whatsoever.
Right.
None.
Yep.
They can't keep stuff from happening in the future. All they can do is comment on the reality that exists right now.
Yeah. And
even at that, their knowledge of what exists right now is often very, very limited. So it's, I, being an engineer, can imagine 1,000 different ways to make ammunition that will penetrate armor, and that's exactly what I've done. I have designed ammunition that can pierce armor, that can penetrate armor, that has nothing to do with the definition of armor-piercing ammunition that they wrote in 1985. There you go. That's what it is. That's the Dagny Dagger.
Sir, why do you hate freedom?
Isn't that the question?
Why do you hate our brave men in blue that protect us from the chaos that the evil men will bring to us?
To be honest, when people ask questions like that, non-ironically, like that's it. There's just nothing else. I mean, we're just destined to be enemies. I'm not even gonna try. But
so is the law written in a? So I assume the law isn't written to say something like ammo that can penetrate X material is illegal. I'm sure they wrote it in a way that you have figured out a method of subverting it, or how exactly have you made armor-piercing ammo in spite of an armor-piercing ammo ban law?
Yeah, right. So in the U.S., of course, everything comes out. There's federal, and then there's state, and then sometimes there's municipal law. So some of the state laws are restrictive like that. Some of them do say anything that is intended to penetrate armor. Well, if somebody put a lot of money in a lawsuit, I'm sure we can make that go away because that's just, vague and untenable, right? But that's the way it is. So even in some states, what I'm doing will still be illegal because it's intended to penetrate. As far as the federal goes, though, the features test is twofold. One, it's armor piercing if it is a projectile or a projectile core that is made of brass, bronze, beryllium, copper, tungsten alloys, iron, steel, or depleted uranium. Well, what I've got here, and I do have one to show you. That's a prototype.
Oh, snap. Hey, that looks sexy, too.
But none of that is on the list of banned materials.
Ah, so that's how you did it.
The other criterion is that it can't have a jacket that is more than a quarter of the total weight of the projectile.
Okay.
So I guess basically the idea is that, well, the core isn't this material, but we'll just make the jacket out of one of those materials. And then since it's such a heavy jacket, that's basically the projectile. So they kind of tried to clean up a possible workaround, but still, but that's it. So anything that follows one or both of those criteria is armor piercing, and you can't make it.
So they made the law a little bit too specific, basically. Well, the other thing is, do you have a name for this new magical metal?
It has a name.
Is it Ragnaronium?
So this stuff isn't actually nailed down quite yet.
Okay.
And though I have a really good idea of where we're going, the problem is, though I want to be as open as possible about all of this, I still have to be pretty reserved and keep a tight lip about the exact composition because of legal considerations. I've got to work with my lawyers and make sure that I keep the upper hand with the ATF and all of that stuff. So, unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I can tell you that it is significantly harder and stronger than the steel that armor plate is made of.
So it's Reardon metal is what you're going to name it. I'm trying to come up with the name.
To be honest, I mean, Atlas Shrugged was prophetic in that it foresaw extraction of oil out of shale, which is basically fracking. And in the same way, I wonder if they foresaw these alloys that I plan on using with Reardon metal.
So how do you make a metal? What determines if a metal is sufficiently different from other metals so as not to fall into the purview of this ban law?
Yeah, I mean, when you get down to it, everything's hazy and it means what they want to say that it means.
Of course,
but I think the exact wording is it is not comprised entirely of, in parentheses, accepting traces of one of these materials. So if there's a little bit of iron that happens to make its way in the alloy, then it's okay because it's just a trace quantity, right?
Okay.
But if it's, so it can't be entirely out of it, excluding traces. To me, if I take literally what that means is it could be 95% 5% iron and like 2% nickel or something like that. I mean, to me, that passes, but I think they would see it the opposite way, where it can have a trace of the prohibited material, but not a, not any kind of substantial quantity.
Yeah, I guess the salient point is they're going to interpret their law however they want to, and they're going to enforce that definition on you, whether you like it or not. Yeah.
That's where the lawyers come in. There you go.
So that brings to the next phase of the conversation is how many lawyer friends do you have?
I got my corporate lawyer. He's a great guy. Well, I can't say he's a great guy. He's a great lawyer. He got me tax exempt after all.
Okay. Right.
But of course, that's not the firearms team. I'm set to use a firearms law firm. It's out of Washington, D.C. They're a pretty high-profile firm, but they are not cheap. So, a lot of what we collect in this crowdfunding campaign will go to purchase their counsel.
So what?
I don't know how big their firm is, but they've got like at least 2 people that they've said are gonna be on my case.
What kind of investment you don't have to share anything you don't want to, obviously, but what kind of investment have you put into this thus far, and what kind of money are you going to need to finish or to get it to production?
I could say I'm an aerospace engineer, and I live like I'm a college student. Okay. If that tells you something of the cost thus far. The crowdfunding campaign is looking to raise $30,000 to finish the development. And then if we get the $30,000, we plan on collecting $30,000 more dollars to open a manufacturing operation. But of course, that's kind of a secondary goal. It will help fund our future projects. And of course, it'll give me a way to make a living so that I can do more of this stuff, full time. But really, $30,000 is what I'm looking for immediately.
Okay, all right. I think that's eminently attainable. There's definitely enough gun owners in this country alone that would probably chip in for this.
One would hope. One would hope.
So, have you heard of Cody Wilson? I guess that's the next piece of the conversation.
I could talk for quite a bit about that. Yeah.
Well,
and in fact, actually, if you want to give me the opportunity, I do have some things to say about that, because I think so far the media has kind of gotten it wrong a bit. So, but tell me, where you? Please go on.
I followed it very closely, obviously. I have currently in my possession here at the house, I have the only, as far as I know, serial numbered Ghost Gunner 001 that was used to carve a lower on the steps of the Capitol building. I have that here at the house. I'm a huge fan of everything the man did and everything the man stood for. What's going on to him now is, I think, was widely predicted, but extremely tragic. And I have some pretty good suspicions with no backing evidence that it's definitely not on the up and up, and maybe that's what you can speak to. I mean, here's his Liberator. We live streamed, printing this thing for the world back when that broke. I think this is critical technology. This eliminates. They can make all the gun laws they want. You can print this now. Everyone can print this. Gun control is over. That's a watershed moment in the history of the entire human species. Self-defense is not really regulatable anymore. It's going to probably take them another 50 years to realize that. But so I guess we could go 2 ways. If you have something you want to say about Cody Wilson, why don't we do that first? And then I want to ask you about how, if you have any plans or ways or what your plan is for distributing this technology, I guess it will be the next topic.
Oh, man. Geez, where do I start? Well, to put things into perspective, I have followed everything Defense Distributed has ever done extremely closely. I should point out, though, that I really only learned about most of what Defense Distributed did in, I think, 2017. So before that, I mean, I'd heard that, okay, there's some like 3D printed guns. I didn't really know anything they did. I didn't know about the Ghost Gunner, any of that stuff. So a lot of people are trying to paint our project, and I think, and I certainly understand why. People are trying to paint our project like, we're Defense Distributed's little brother. And I want to maintain somewhat of a separation there, because while all of Defense Distributed's work is very instructive and shows a lot of strategy and shows kind of a path for some of this stuff, that was kind of never my thinking. I did not start. I'm not a computer guy, and I didn't start out in this thinking about crypto anarchy. But I started in 2011 just as kind of in 2011, I could have wrapped all of my ideology up in a Gadsden flag, if I could put it that way. And I started thinking about how to make gunpowder at home. I thought, well, they'll come take the weapons, sure, but or they can't take the guns because that pesky, keep and bear, but they can restrict ammunition. So even back in 2011, when I was still in college, I was thinking, how do I get around this? And for me, it's always been kind of like a physical technology thing. Like, we need to make new technology. So I've always been like very separate there. I was excited, of course, to learn about everything they were doing. And I've met John Sullivan, who is the guy he's the engineer there that really designed the Liberator. And he's critical. You can read about when Cody met John in Cody's book. I met him. He's a fan of the long-term goals of Atlas Arms. But yeah.
So I guess the salient question. Sorry to interrupt. The salient, the thing everybody's going to want to know is, do you think they're going to do it to you, and how? And what do you feel about that?
My first reaction when people talk about that kind of thing, like, what if they do this to you? At some point, as a principled individual, you just have to say, I'm doing what I'm doing, and if bad people come and do bad things to me, that's just what happens. I try to do everything I can not to go to prison. I don't want to go to prison. That the impression that I get is that it's not good, and I can't do my work if I'm in prison. I can follow the law as best I can and keep my nose clean, which is, I think, better than what Cody did in the long run. But that's all you can do. I do, though. I mean, there are a lot of libertarians, and I don't fault them for it, because there's plenty of history to show that we should be suspicious like this. A lot of people think that he was entirely set up. I don't think so. I think that he was doing some stuff that most people would consider less than savory. And, he is very confident, edging on to narcissistic, many people have said. And I think that he didn't think that he would get in trouble with a big old target on his back. I'm sure a lot of people do what he did and get away with it just fine, because no one actually cares. But I think that he just got used to getting away with stuff and fell. And I don't want to denigrate Cody in any way. He was a great anarchist politician, and he called a lot of people to action, and he was a driving force that got a lot done for us. And I hope one day I can meet him. I would love to talk to him more than I have. I've only sent a few emails to him. But I think really the lesson to be learned there is, don't get too big for your britches. And, act, live your life like you've got a target on you.
I don't want to.
There you go.
I think that's sufficient. I don't want to make this whole episode about Cody and what happened to him. This is about you and the amazing awesomeness and activism that you're doing to change the world for the better. Maybe we'll have an episode about that later. But I think I think he was set up in more ways. I don't think it was at all as simple as people say it was. But let's move on. Sorry, go ahead. What?
Oh, I'm nothing. I'm just saying that's.
Oh, okay.
I get you.
So, last call to everyone watching Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. If you have any questions, get them in now, and we'll get them in. So while we're waiting on those questions to come in, let's. I guess the last thing I'm curious about is, the Ghost Gunner is powerful because it lets me take something into my house that now, for at least until the machine breaks, I can make lowers. Anybody with a 3D printer can now print liberators. Is it part of your roadmap? Is it part of your plan to create any kind of technology that I will be able to bring into my home to create this ammo on my own? Or is this just going to be something that you sell? Or is it going to be a formula? I don't even know if this is like, how do you plan on decentralizing? That's a bad word, but do you have any plans for that?
Yeah, right. I plan on writing Ghost Gunner code for people to make this. Now of course, you're gonna have to have a jig. And that's why it gets a little tricky. And I'll tell you that the most difficult part that most people that don't know a lot about guns don't know is that bullets actually have to be very precise. It actually matters for bullets, not just like you're talking tenths of a thousandth of an inch of precision there. So like 1/10,000th of an inch. Makes a difference. Maybe not one, but at least a few tenths of a thousandth of an inch make a difference. So while I believe from what I see that the Ghost Gunner is going to be capable of that, I've done some preliminary testing. I think that we can make Ghost Gunner code, but it does make it like very tricky, and it'll take a decent effort to develop the code and the jigs and the procedure to run it on the Ghost Gunner. Now, the way that this would happen is that you get a jig, you buy from McMaster Car or somewhere else, you buy the material for it, the raw material, you put it in the jig, and then the Ghost Gunner will go through one operation and turn them out 10 or 15 bullets at a time.
Okay, so we have a question from one of those guys, is his name. Can this ammo be sintered, or does it need to be cast?
I assume that it could be sintered if you had the technology to do it. Again, I mean, it comes down to the really tight tolerances that bullets require.
Can you describe for the people that aren't aware what sintering is?
Oh, sintering. Essentially, sintering is when you've got like a powder, volume of powder, and then you heat it up to meld all of those grains of the powder together to form a cohesive solid. It can be done with lasers, as in the case with like a lot of metal 3D printing. It can be done in a crucible, like the way that they make tungsten carbide tools. Yeah, you start with the metal, you put it in a mold, and you heat it.
Okay. So the idea would be, if you didn't have the sintering machines are really expensive though, right? As far as I know, that there's no like prosumer. Yeah. So the idea would be we would buy like a block of this metal from you, or are you going to release the formula or process for making it once it's complete? Is it going to be open source?
I mean, all of it open source. Yeah. Okay. The physicality of the bullets, like how to make the projectiles themselves, and then also loading data, which is critical to reloaders. So how deep you set the bullet, how much powder do you put in, that kind of stuff. All of that. I mean, everything that I do when I'm done with this project, the public will be able to very easily look it up and find out everything about it that I know. Now, everything will be open source.
I probably should have led with some of these questions because I've got a lot all of a sudden. So is this a metal that you could forge at home? Because there's a lot of people that do like home hobby forging.
If you had a source for it, you could do it.
Okay, I know you won't. You don't want to talk about the materials yet, but okay.
Yeah, right. It's sticky.
That's fine.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. And maybe when you
pretty
release the info, we'll have you
uncommon.
back. When you release this thing, we'll definitely have you back on, and maybe we can talk more about that stuff. Does that
Sounds
sound
good.
cool? I hope I'll get one of the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
pieces. I would be honored. That would be amazing. Okay, so the idea is that we would buy a hunk of this metal, put it in a jig, and use the ghost gunner to carve it. Is the idea?
Yeah, that's right.
And then
That's right.
standard loaders to load the ammunition, and then we're good. So, is the thing that makes a round bulletproof more velocity based, or is it more material of the
There's
round?
like, yeah, there's a few things going on. So first, yeah, you want it to be really fast. Velocity defeats armor, not mass. So a shotgun slug won't even, I mean, a shotgun slug has incredible amounts of energy, but it's a slow, fat thing that much slower than most pistol ammunition. So a bulletproof vest designed to stop pistol ammunition will stop a shotgun slug, even though a rifle cartridge that has much less energy will go right through.
Okay.
So you want to trade your mass for velocity, and so our the projectile we're looking at is very lightweight. So it uses all of its energy in velocity instead of mass. And then, of course, like you said, materials. So you don't want it to, like, lead is really bad, of course, because it's extremely soft. It just gets beaten up. So you want something to be as strong as it can be, absorb as much energy as it can without deforming. I think that's kind of intuitive. And then the last thing is there's a lot to be said for terminal ballistics, which is to say, if you could slow time to almost a stop, then there's a lot going on in an impact.
Mhm.
And the way that the material in the armor is moved by and acts on the projectile is also a thing to consider. So it's about the shape. So we have the weight, the shape, the material. And in combination, those three things, that's the recipe.
Okay. And okay, that's awesome. We had a question. Is the ammo for all bores?
All bores, no.
Calibers,
In the beginning, I'll be making it for 9mm. That's what our development is. It's just easier to develop 9mm. And then also 9mm is the most common handgun cartridge, at least in the US, which is significant because that means if we make if we put on the shelves armor piercing 9mm, then body armor that it can defeat is entirely obsolete. Whereas if we did it with 45 Casull, I mean, who cares? Nobody uses 45 Casull, so even the ATF wouldn't care.
Okay.
Uh,
All right. So
but,
I guess. Sorry. Go ahead. If you had anything else, and then I have one, and then I have like a final question.
No, I plan on. I've got so much in the project. I want to get it out there, but it's. We do plan on other calibers though. I want to do a 5.56. I want to do a 308, and then also like 10mm and 40 Smith & Wesson, which is the same bullet in a different casing. So there are some others I want to get to. I should also say, just for you, because I know, Patrick, that you will appreciate it, I have been throwing around an idea of making a 308, a high-powered rifle cartridge that is not able to get through soft body armor, but is intended to defeat the highest level of rifle armor, which even armor-piercing rifle ammunition can't get through. And I plan on naming it the Danish Gold Destroyer.
Oh, snap. Oh, man. I'm so excited.
That's the first time I told anybody that. So
you heard it here first, people. The Danish Gold. Oh, man. That's awesome. I am so excited. I can't tell you how excited I am about your project. So I have one more question, and I think it's a heavy one. So get ready.
Okay. Gimme.
Because this is how it's going to come from the general public when the day comes. You have a successful project. You successfully get this ammunition out into the world. Some bad guy somehow gets a hold of it. And some cop gets shot with it through his body armor. And the entire world's media begins basically setting you on fire, burning you at the stake, figuratively, maybe even literally. What is your response when they interview you?
I mean, it depends on what they ask. I mean, I think like most of us of our political persuasion would, that their kind of got 'em questions are disingenuous and really just kind of like empty of all inquisitory spirit.
Can I role play the reporter and just be the bad guy for a minute?
Go for it.
And we don't have to do this if you don't want to. We totally don't have to, but
I have an interview with Huffington Post coming up, so you better get me ready.
Okay, well, here we go. Let's crack the knuckles. So Officer so-and-so is dead tonight. His family no longer has a father and a husband tonight because they were killed with one of the rounds that you invented and released into the world to subvert a law meant to protect the heroes that keep us safe. If you had it to do over, would you do it again? Why did you do this?
Yes.
Do you feel responsible for Officer so-and-so's death and the loss to his family?
Yes, I would do it over again. I think it was a good thing to do. Well, I mean, I'm speaking from the future, of course. It is a good thing to do.
Right.
No, I don't feel responsible. I didn't pull the trigger. I'm not responsible for that. I'm not responsible for anyone else's actions. And then number two, I would say, look, I'm not going to, I would tell this, reporter, look, I'm not going to answer any more of these questions, and I'm not going to like stand here and be pilloried for my actions when all the people that I graduated, aerospace engineering school with, they went to work for Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Boeing. And they sit there all day in their corporate offices and make weapons that are only used by whoever happens to sit in the Oval Office. Their weapons are used to kill hundreds and maybe even thousands of kids. They wreak havoc all over the world and they make the weapons for terrorists. And you want to come over here and ask me about a dinky little bullet that an individual can wield? You go talk to those people that make those real scary weapons, and then we can sit down and have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Reporter, tell me about that bomb that just blew up that school bus full of children, and then we can talk. I think that was a great response. So I think you're going to be good in that area.
Good.
All right. So can you tell us where people can go to find out more, how people can contact you, and finally, is there anything as far as human resources that you need that people could volunteer to help you out with?
Yeah, you can please go to my crowdfunding campaign hosted on gundynamics.com. Gundynamics, I should plug them because we've kind of got a partnership. Gundynamics is a crowdfunding site specifically for firearms projects because, of course, firearms projects get kicked off of Indiegogo and Kickstarter and GoFundMe. So I'm hosted on there. There are a couple other firearms technology campaigns hosted there. Please check it out. I think the link is in the description of this broadcast. Please, if you can, give me some money to help with development. It's not just lining my pockets. It's not even helping me raise a profit. This is just development and for me to give away everything that I'm doing. If you want to know more about the company and our goals in general and not just this project, then you can go to atlasarms.org, which is our website, and there we've got listed some stuff about the contributors to the project, the philosophy, the position of the company, and all of that good stuff.
Mr. Anakin said the reporter will cut you off right after you say, "No, it's not my fault." Thought that was funny.
Maybe so. I mean, I don't know. I don't find the need to explain what I'm doing. in the end, look, if you don't like it, then like bring your guns to bear. If you want to keep us from our weapons, then you're going to have to use your weapons. That's just how it is. But all right, come and take it, as they say.
Come and take it. So we'll leave it with that. To everyone watching, thank you so much for watching. I hope this was informative. I bet you're as excited as I am about where this is going to go. I personally will probably be on the leading edge of organizing an open carry walk here in Texas when your ammo is ready and we can load everybody's guns with it. So I hope you'll stay in touch. I know I'll reach out to you and maybe we can.
I got some bad news for you on that one.
Uh-oh.
Texas is one of the states where anything intended to pierce ammunition is illegal.
Intended by the person manufacturing it or intended by the person carrying it? Whose brain has to have the magical thoughts in it to make it illegal?
Ask the ATF. Ask the ATF.
Interesting.
But look, man, I'm behind you if you don't want to comply, but I just have to warn you.
Well, that might be the case. So last question. I know I keep saying last question. Timeline? What are you thinking?
Timeline. Oh, okay. So, I'd have this done a long time ago if I had the resource to do it, which is why I have to have the crowdfunding campaign. So, it's hard to say because I need the funding that the campaign is trying to get. But after we're fully funded, after we get the $30,000, I believe that we'll be done within a year. I think we can get it all turned out within the year. I'm hoping that 6 months is what we can do, but a lot of the time depends on the ATF, depends on what we have to do, all the tricks that we have to do for the ATF, how fast they respond to us. So in some respect, it's not entirely in our control, but yeah, you should have a year in mind, and you might be surprised at 6 months.
All right, Austin Jones, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.